Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Start to Worry with your host, Jim Kimball. As our town continues to burn to the ground, Satan has been slaughtered and sent to heaven. Should we start to worry?
I don't think there's any more room for not considering underestimating the importance of beginning to start the process of mulling over the conceptualization of starting to worry. And the time to do it is very soon.
Welcome to a very concerned Giles and the Goalie podcast.
Should we be concerned?
Well,
start thinking about being concerned.
It's probably time to start thinking about if we should be concerned.
I think the time for that is soon.
Very soon.
Yes.
Wait, did you say soon or swoon?
Well, it is. We, if you want to hit the alarm, we are in a category 3 swoon right now. I believe we can safely say that at this point it is swoon season.
Brought out my specially crafted Simpsons GIF.
Yes.
What's that, boy? Swoon.
Swoon.
What is it, boy? And the dog flies away. Swoon. I am Giles Farrell. You can find me on the Twitter machine at Giles Farrell. Next to me here is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Find him on Twitter at Ben Remington. No spaces, underscores, dashes, or the like in any of that. As I said, this is the Giles and the Goalie podcast. We are part of a website called Zone Coverage. You can find them at Zone Coverage MN on Twitter. Zone Coverage MN, right?
Yes.
Okay.
At Zone Coverage MN, yes.
I forget. But anyway, if you are looking for a wonderful stocking stuffer gift this holiday season, go to zonecoverage.com/subscribe. You can use the promo code GATG20 to get a year's subscription to Zone Coverage for just $20. Not only helps out this otherwise fine production, but helps out all the great writers and podcasts across the Zone Coverage website. So do consider that this holiday shopping season if you feel so inclined. And it gives you all the access to the written content on the website as it goes for a whole year. So there you go. There's
for the sports fan on the go.
Yeah, for that wonderful Minnesota sports fan in your life.
Or yourself.
Yeah. So there you go. I have so much joy right now because Liverpool is top of the table in the Premier League.
Do you have the Christian Bale good for you drop? Is that something that we can use?
As my former roommate texted me yesterday, he replied to me with the Michael Scott gif. No question about it. I'm ready to be heard again, as he commented, the Minnesota sports fan.
I was going to say, weren't they pretty good last year? And how'd that work out?
It was all right.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're content with losing the championship?
A goaltender meltdown
That's
in the
true, yeah. Well, and their best player
Champions League final,
got hurt as well.
Yeah.
So Mo Salah
went out in the Champions League final, but goaltending meltdown, which I'm pretty used to right now.
That's a hell of a segue, Giles.
That's a great segue.
Slam dunk.
Oh, boom. I am getting so good at this. I spent all week being sick crafting that.
Yeah.
Perfect, beautiful segue into the Minnesota Wild discussion that we are about to embark on. What a blissfully crap week for the Minnesota Wild as they... I don't know how to describe it, and I think I perfectly described it after the Edmonton game on Friday evening and the video recap that was uploaded across all of our social media channels. But they play Tuesday in Vancouver. They get the win 3-2. They looked much better across the board, and
Dubnyk looked better.
He did. After the second goal he gave up, which wasn't overly great on his part, he dialed in and
held him off the third period.
He got the win. And in the recap, I gave him the first star of the game because he was very good. He had the night off for Calgary, and the Wild lose 2-0, in which Mike Smith looked like a saint in that game. It was incredible how they just made him look like the next coming of Hasek.
Yeah.
And then they have the Edmonton game, which was the rubber match of the series, or not the series, but the road trip, and they just completely crapped the bed.
Yeah, I put it in a much less PG-13 way before the show here today. Something to do with...
Yeah, we're not airing that.
Yeah, clinics. But yeah, I mean, really crapping the bed is a very, very gentle way of putting what happened on Friday night. Because, after the Vancouver game, you're like, all right, decent win against a talented team that's probably not great, but, a talented young team. Calgary is on a roll right now. I don't think any of us realized how good Calgary was. They're on top of the West right now. We can get into that, a little bit with Central Intelligence maybe, but they're leading the West right now and having kind of a storybook season and so what surprised me is that was the first game the Wild were shut out this season. I guess obviously I've watched nearly every game, but it was a little bit shocking to me. That was the first game they were shut out against Mike Smith of all people, like who isn't even really having all the tremendous either. They got that backup there.
Bad.
What's his name? Starts with an R.
Richter or something. I don't remember.
Riddick?
Riddick.
The Chronicles of
David
Riddick.
Yeah.
And he's been having a great year. And so yeah, they're shut up by Mike Smith of all people. And then you go into Edmonton, and my God, I mean, that was just
woof.
Yeah, that was like a story that you told before the podcast that involved tequila and bed sheets, and it was ugly.
Yes, mass vomiting after. That game is perfectly what you would expect if you mix beer and tequila on one evening. And
I think you mix tequila with anything. That's what you should expect.
Oh, there you go. But so if you go back to the Washington game at home that followed that great Minnesota Wild road trip that they went 5-2 on, there have been 12 games since the Wild returned from that great road trip. And there have been just 4 wins.
Yeah.
That's 8 out of 12 they have lost, and more importantly, they've lost them all in regulation. No loser points. And in a league that loves to promote the loser point, not getting loser points now has resulted in the Minnesota Wild losing their place in the Central Division. They were second for a good long while, and they have fallen down into 5th, and they, more importantly, have fallen out of a playoff spot. Mm-hmm. Have we ventured into swoon territory? Is it time to declare this a swoon?
Yes, as the alarm sounded earlier in the show. I believe my definition was losing 7 out of 10 games is technically a swoon. And they have had one every season until last season. They did not have a swoon last season. It was historic, and we all celebrated accordingly. But yeah, this is officially a swoon. And it hasn't, I think they built up a decent pad, as you mentioned. They were second in the division going into the said swoon, and so they had a decent pad to work with, much as they did 2 years ago when they swooned in March, and they were, it cost them the division. They had still ended up second in the division, but they had such a good pad, the swoon cushion, as we named it. We had the swoon cushion 2 seasons ago. So this is kind of them eating away at the swoon cushion they had built early in the season. But yeah, very much definitely a swoon. What's interesting is that this is a swoon earlier than we're accustomed to seeing. Usually the swoon season is more the January to February to March kind of thing. Now we're dealing with one that, started in November and is creeping into December. And if they can't turn things around, then obviously that's a concern. But I mean, that if you want to find the swoon silver lining, that would be it. That it's earlier in the season. They have lots of time to recover, and I think they've got the talent to do that if they can kind of solve their goaltending woes, and if the injury bug doesn't bite them too hard, which I'm sure we'll get to. I think they can work their way out of it, but it's still a swoon nonetheless. So it's still obviously doing its damage.
We've done our fair share of dissecting the goaltending in recent shows, so we won't venture too much into that here.
And I'll write on that possibly this week or next.
I'm going to throw this stat out that since that Washington Capitals game where they mopped the floor with the Wild, and this is kind of going on a thought that the Hockey Wilderness Twitter account had during a game. I think it was Friday against Edmonton. Kind of wondering what has happened to Devan Dubnyk, because he took that hit from Tom Wilson to the head. And so I looked at the numbers, and since that game, Devan Dubnyk's save percentage at even strength is .857.
Oh, God.
.857. And usually your even strength save percentage should be higher than your regular save percentage.
Because your power play and penalty kill obviously.
Right. And if you have qualifying the stats list that I pulled that up on, if you take goalies that have played at least 5 games during that time, you have 43 goaltenders in the NHL who have played 5 games or more in that time. That .857 save percentage is the lowest of all 43 goaltenders.
Oh, God, yeah. Russo has actually mentioned that as well, that Dubnyk hasn't looked the same since the Tom Wilson hit. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that I completely disagree. I'm not as sure that there's an exact correlation there, because we've seen Dubnyk good for very small stretches. I thought he looked decent in the Maple Leafs game, even though there was some fluky, weird goals that, you can't really control 2 goals going off of Nick Seeler's abs. And then he looked all right in Vancouver, but, maybe there is something to it. Certainly a concern, and that just raises further concern, because it's like, if that is the case, if it is anything remotely concussion related, how is the team not, if us, jamokes on our couch are noticing this crap, how is the team not? And how, I don't know. Again, I don't know that it's 100% lock it in. Wilson gave him a concussion. That's why he's been bad. I don't know that that's the case, but it's worth talking about, and it's worth looking into. And I don't understand, the team obviously hasn't said anything. Maybe they have looked into this, and maybe it's not. Maybe they've already given Dubnyk, an impact test or something, or scanned his cat. I don't know. Maybe they have, but it just seems it's weird to me that we haven't heard a breath of it from any official source, but rather just a speculation from Russo and from our friends at Hockey Wilderness.
Yeah, it's always dangerous when you're speculating on what may or may not be going on in the head, and it's so weird, and we've never seen Dubnyk have this horrible of a stretch with the Wild before.
He's been bad, and that's led to some swoons, like that March one a couple years ago. He was pretty bad. I mean, he was around a .900 save percentage, which is kind of bad. It's not 857 bad. Yeah. So
No.
you're definitely right about that. I don't know. It's really tough to speculate, as you said. I mean, let's be honest. Goalies are all playing with a short deck anyway. So
When his just even strength save percentage on the season has now plummeted into, kind of Alex Stalock territory, which is alarming.
Mm-hmm.
It's just at 907 right now per Corsica. Not good.
And that was after an incredible start. I mean,
Yeah.
we forget now how awesome he was. We don't. Me and you, we're very
We
aware.
remember that.
Yeah, we remember. But a lot of fans, if you read Russo's mentions, a lot of fans are completely oblivious to the fact that Devan Dubnyk was God in the month of October. And yeah, it's just the fact that he's come that far that quickly is just kind of really a testament to how bad he has been.
Yeah, it's just been not good, and I don't know what you do from this point, because essentially they have tried to just keep throwing him out there in the hopes that it's going to get better, and that has not worked. And it's now going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward, because if he continues to struggle, then you're looking at maybe Alex Stalock getting more starts, and that's terrifying, because I'm sorry, when I watch Alex Stalock in goal, like, the crease looks like it's been like it's grease, essentially. He slides everywhere. It bothers me. And I am nowhere close to being a goalie critique as you are.
Sure.
But when I see that, then yikes. But
You're not wrong.
I don't know. And Alex Stalock in his start against the Flames, he did pretty well.
Yeah,
He kept them in the game that they probably really had no business being in. And so that credit to where it's due, but I don't know if Alex Stalock going forward is somebody you want getting extended starts. And
No, I don't think so, and I think that the team is aware of that, and that's why they're so willing to let Dubnyk kind of play through his struggles. If they thought that Alex Stalock was a guy that you could, set out there for, let's say, 8 out of the next 10 games and expect to be in every one of those games, I think they would have done it already. I could be wrong on that, but Alex Stalock is not NHL starter. I mean, that's he's a serviceable backup, and he has his moments at that. But let's not go any further with that. And Dubnyk's struggles are what they are. But credit to him, in the past, he's always been able to pull out of them. This one is maybe a little more severe than others, and so that's obviously where the red flag comes up. But what do you do with the goaltending situation? I mean, do you find a way to call up Kaapo Kähkönen and just give him some starts? And I wrote about this in my mailbag that came out Saturday morning. Goaltending is very much a situation where sitting doesn't really help you much. You got to get reps. You got to stay warm. You got to be sharp. It's very much a craft that you hone. And benching guys doesn't really send a message with goaltending. That hasn't helped many goaltenders. Sure, the one night off to clear your head, I can make an argument for that. But let's say Dubnyk doesn't, you bench Dubnyk for a week. I don't think you're doing him any favors there. And so, is the team desperate enough to go to Kaapo Kähkönen just because Dubnyk has been so terrible and Stalock hasn't really been awesome either? I don't know. I don't know that they go that far with it. I don't know that Kähkönen's ready for that. I mean, he's played North American hockey for a whopping 2 months. You can't underscore that. I mean, that's North American hockey is a very different game than the European hockey. Kähkönen's been in Finland for years and just came over to the U.S. now. So, I mean, that's very much throwing a guy right into the fire, and that's kind of a good way to set up prospects to fail is to send them to, especially goalies, to throw them out there before they're ready. I don't know that that's the answer, but I don't have any other answers, so that's the tough part.
something else to kind of go on from this week is during the Flames game Thursday evening. Mikko Koivu in the third period was going to fly by Mark Giordano, and Giordano sticks his leg out, and they get a knee-on-knee collision, which resulted in Koivu missing the remainder of the third, and he did not play Friday night against Edmonton, and the team sent him home just to have the doctors look at it, and it just kind of reading between the lines. Nobody really had any updates on him, and there hasn't been any as we record here, but it doesn't seem like this is going to be something that he comes back in a day or two from. It's going to be an extended period of time off. Mark Giordano subsequently was suspended for 2 games by Department of Player Safety for this, and you see the GIF that I tweeted that Koivu kind of hunches over after he falls, and then he gets up and he just slams a stick into the glass as he kind of knows something's wrong.
Yep.
So now you're looking at an extended stretch of hockey that the Wild will be playing without their best defensive forward and one of their better offensive players this year. So really, you're losing, and then he's
a bona fide center. Yeah, a bona fide center is the biggest deal of all.
Their top face-off centerman. And as I wrote about last week, Mikko Koivu was having an incredible season so far. And now you have to fill his void in the lineup. And my bold and, in hindsight, awful prediction from Friday's game of Joel Eriksson Ek stepping up and having a big night in Koivu's absence just turned to just utter filth, which somebody added Old Takes Exposed on Twitter from that.
Like, Old Takes Exposed gives a flying F about Joel Eriksson Ek.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Old Takes. Well, I also predicted the Wild would win 4-2.
Okay, yeah, that's worthy of a Old Takes Exposed.
Old Takes Exposed didn't pick up on that, but
darn.
Yeah, it not good. But that is centrally the player who has to step up now in Koivu's absence. Joel Eriksson Ek, they I don't know why, but they put Granlund. They tried Granlund out at center Friday night. That didn't seem to work overly great.
Nothing worked on Friday night.
I would suggest just putting Granlund back on the wing and just trying anyone else at center, because Granlund's most productive place is going to be on the wing.
Yeah.
Just leave him there.
It's really, and I don't believe they've made a move yet, have they? I haven't been online much this morning, but they haven't made a move from Iowa yet. So what's really unfortunate is that Sam Annis is hurt right now. And that would be a guy that I would like to get a look at who can play the center spot. Then they've also got Luke Cunnin down in Iowa, who it's like, well, you probably want him up sooner rather than later. So now might be a good time for that. I don't know. There's a lot of guys down there. Kyle Rao is another name that, maybe could play a little bit of center, but I'm not sure that they're super comfortable with that. But right now it's really tough. It's like, you can keep on doing the Coyle shuffle, where Coyle keeps bouncing back and forth between wing and center and wing and center and wing and center. That's probably what they're going to do, quite honestly, is shovel Coyle into a center spot and just kind of deal with the way the rest of the lineup kind of hashes out. But it's a tough spot. And going back to the injury a little bit, I'm with you. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look like he's going to be back next week. But I am very encouraged by the fact that he skated off under his own power. This isn't this wasn't a ligament explosion that he dealt with. I mean, if you look this slow recap, old friend from Wild Extra, Aaron Lipensky, actually tweeted a screenshot of Koivu's knee as the contact was made, and his knee is going straight sideways. Like it is a really ugly look, and there's no doubt some damage done there. But even though he felt it, and even though he was very upset instantly, the fact that he skated off under his own power gives me a lot of hope that he won't be out for a long time. Like, this isn't a season-ending injury. This isn't an injury where he's going to be out for 6 months. I mean, he's probably going to miss some time, though. He's probably going to miss weeks, not days for sure. Hopefully it doesn't turn into months on top of months, though.
The most kind of upsetting thing from this is you're losing Koivu's defensive prowess.
Absolutely.
And we saw that perhaps best on Friday against Edmonton when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl kind of had their way and
ate him alive.
When you throw Koivu out there, or when you are able to throw Koivu out there against that line, maybe some of those chances go away because his presence is there and he knows what he's doing. And now you're having to throw a Charlie Coyle, Mikael Granlund, Joel Eriksson Ek, or whomever out there instead, and that's not good. And this is alarming because you throw your best defensive player now is gone, and you have goaltending problems. This does not add up to the Wild turning things around anytime soon. This can mean an extended stretch of terrible hockey. And when we were at Thanksgiving, we talked about how the Wild were in a really good place and that, they kind of passed that benchmark test, and being in the playoffs this time of year means, you have a solid shot of making it. Well, now here they are, and this will be the test for this team this year, because if they don't get out of this anytime soon, you can fall into a place where it'll be hard to recover from, especially in the West.
Yeah, no kidding. It's similar to last year where they had to overcome not having Parise for almost half the season. That's kind of what they're looking at now is not having Koivu for quite a while, and Koivu has his haters out there, but it really was evident on Friday, and even a little bit on Thursday night after he was out of the game. Very evident how important he is to this team, because guys like McDavid and, as we saw on Thursday, Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan, those guys create a lot of space out there. And that's something that really struck me in both of those games, is how much space those players were able to create in the offensive zone. Like, you think that you would have players draped all over either one of those players, Gaudreau or McDavid, but both of those guys ate the Wild alive. They really did, and they dictated both of those games on Thursday and Friday, and it was ugly. And I think that's not to be discounted. I think that Koivu's defensive presence alone is helped this team win a lot more than people are really aware of. Our friend Tony, who's now at The Athletic, Tony Abbott, tweeted that McDavid has only had, I believe it was 13 points in 10 previous games against the Wild, or something like that, maybe 10 points in 8 games, something like that. So they had held him to, this sounds weird, but held him to only a point and change per game. Well, then on Friday night, he scores 4 points. And,
is that all?
And it's like, ding, yeah, hello, there it is right there. And so it's very, very much a situation where it's like, you're going to realize very quickly what Koivu means to this team.
The other kind of talking point from the end of that game was the Matt Dumba hit, and then the subsequent kind of fight that took place after. And what's your take on this? Because Dumba wasn't given a penalty; he was allowed to continue on, and I'm trying to look up it was Mikael Backlund
that he hit, and then Lombard went after him, and then
the guy jumps out onto the ice, and then he just goes right at Dumba, and he gets the instigator, and then there's the penalty and
automatic game, and
the fine and the suspension.
So it was a lot of fun to see the Calgary faithful of course, do what sports fans do and go berserk over Matt Dumba's hit. And some people, even locally, have said that Dumba left his feet. And I didn't think it was. I think he loaded up for that hit. And when you make contact with someone, you naturally kind of leave your feet a little bit because it's a collision. That's what happens when people collide. But I thought it was a completely clean hit by Dumba, and you don't want to take this stance a lot because of where we're at with concussions in the NHL, but that one's on Backlund a lot. I mean, he gets the puck in the high slot or just above the hash marks and puts his head down as Dumba's literally coming across the blue line at him. And it's like, concussion protocol, primary point of contact with the head, which wasn't the case in this one, but all of that protocols combined doesn't matter. He's got to keep his head up. And that's just fundamental hockey. I mean, if you keep your head up, that hit doesn't happen. I mean, it's more of a glancing blow. Maybe the puck leaves the stick, maybe it doesn't. But he puts his head down, and Dumba just absolutely destroys him with a shoulder to shoulder, and no head contact and no leaving the feet. And then people take exception to it. I was so baffled by it. It's like there was disrespectful late in the game. Okay, there was a minute left in the game or 2 minutes left in the game, and they're down 2 goals. If you're not trying to score at that point, it was in the Calgary zone. If you're not trying to dislodge the puck from somebody, why are you even trying? I mean, you're down 2 goals, the minute left, you should just wave the white flag and stop playing hockey. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then send this goon out so he can do his, so he can go Steve Bertuzzi on the bit, which is exactly what he did. He basically attacked Dumba from behind for Dumba wouldn't fight him because he had no reason to. And he basically jumps him from behind and just starts hammering. I mean, it's absolute bull. It's absolute just crap hockey. And I've been a vocal supporter of keeping fighting in the game in what little instances we do see it still. But that's the kind of crap that you don't want in the game. That's the kind of crap that needs to leave the game, is that kind of crap where it's like, oh, he hit our guy with a minute left in the game. Well, your guy put his freaking head down coming across the middle of the zone with the puck. What the hell do you think was going to happen? Like, you don't have to be a rocket science to figure out that's what's going to happen to you. It really pissed me off, to be obviously. It just absolutely, it was like, how dumb to bitch about a completely clean hockey play.
Don't you
and then to
hate
send
kids?
out, this little terrier goon to pull a Steve Bertuzzi on Dumba and then be confused as to why he got a suspension afterwards. Like, I'm sure Minnesota fans have done it, but I was just elated at the Calgary fans getting all that egg in their face after that bull. I'm done.
Wow. How do you follow that?
You don't.
I don't.
Next topic.
I can't. Boy.
I'm passionate about that kind of stuff because I am a defender of fighting in the game, and I think that it does have a place in the game. But when you have something like that just, I don't know. I feel like it kind of craps on it, like it kind of craps on the actual code that does exist, where people are taking liberties. Dumba didn't take any liberties, so it pisses me off.
Now, that hit, again, it was well within the rules of the National Hockey League. Is that maybe something I'd like to see the league try to phase out a little bit more? Yes, because you don't want to see good players, get concussions from hits like that. But as it sits, that is a hit perfectly within the rules of the league, and the Flames calling it disrespectful is
joke.
It's quite something. The Wild are pressing. They're trying to get a goal to get them, within one to tie it up. I don't get where they're coming from. No. I really don't. And they get Calgary again here the next week. So we'll see.
It's going to be a gong show.
You know what? This bad blood all stems back to, I think it was 2 years ago when Johnny Gaudreau was slashed and then he broke a finger.
Yeah, he broke a finger.
And that's essentially what has kind of started all this with the two teams. So that's kind of the crux of why maybe these two teams don't have much love lost with each other here. But
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it at that because I really can't go on your rant any more than what you did. And
No, I know. Sorry about
you've
that.
left me some beeps to edit in.
I just,
But,
especially after your captain goes knee on knee to a guy.
Yeah,
Like,
let's
don't
talk
tell me
about
that the Wild are,
disrespect.
yeah, don't tell me that the Wild are a cheap team and that they pull this kind of crap after the time. After your captain literally goes knee on knee with our captain and puts him out for probably a month or two. Like, don't even give me that crap.
Let's talk about disrespect here.
Yeah.
All right, moving on because we've still got a couple of topics here to hit on before we get to our kind of show fillers, if you will. But I
thought I was the filler.
Yeah, the other newsworthy thing. One of the other newsworthy things from the week was on Monday, the Philadelphia Flyers hired
Yes.
former Minnesota Wild general manager
This is
Chuck
the comedy
Fletcher.
portion of the show.
Yep. And while you got your rant, now I'm going to get
Yeah,
mine
yeah, have at
because
it.
I'm going to go right off on this topic. But Chuck Fletcher introduced Wednesday as the Flyers general manager to the media. He was officially hired Monday. And weirdly, just the ninth general manager in the history of the Philadelphia Flyers. I found that very fascinating.
Same.
Just a week after they fired Ron Hextall, they very quickly moved in and hired Fletcher. It was very evident from the moment that Hextall was fired that he was the guy the insiders were reporting immediately that Chuck Fletcher was the top candidate, and he seemingly was just one of a few. I feel like they just talked to a couple other guys just as show. It wasn't. They knew Chuck Fletcher was going to be their guy, and they hired him as he was a special assistant in New Jersey for this season. And I found it, I don't know, it wasn't, I'm not going to say fascinating, but a lot of remarks from Flyers fans about how great the Flyers are going to go into cap hell because Chuck Fletcher's going to sign all these players to long-term contracts that will just kind of ruin their structure and blah, blah, blah. Essentially saying that the Parise and Suter contracts ruined the Wild in Fletcher's previous tenure as a general manager here in Minnesota. And as I passionately wrote about on Tuesday on Zone Coverage, that narrative is very wrong. Mm-hmm. The narrative that the Zach Parise and Ryan Suter contracts have hurt the Minnesota Wild is wrong. It's garbage. I'm not going to swear like you did, but I really want to. But anyway, and I wrote that you take Parise's and Suter's body of work since they've been here. Parise has been one of the best producers in goals per game in the league while he's been in Minnesota. He's having a terrific year this year, back at full health. One of the top producers on the Wild again. And then you have Suter, who has been producing like one of the top 10 defensemen in the league. And he has been one of the top 10 defensemen in the league essentially during this time. And the Wild have been a playoff team every year that Parise and Suter have been here. The Wild had made the playoffs just 3 times in their history before Parise and Suter showed up. They have vaulted the Wild into a annual playoff team. They have raised the expectations of what this team should be doing. They have earned every cent that they have been paid. And there should be zero regrets by Minnesota for signing them. And what I noted at the end of this article was the subsequent moves by Chuck Fletcher is what ruined the Wild, not the Parise and Suter contracts. The mismanaging of draft picks.
Yeah.
Giving away so many second-round draft picks. Yeah. The drafting of, players who just are going to be career third liners.
High floor,
right.
low
You
ceiling
essentially
kinda
are
guys.
taking the sure bet player that's going to be a third liner over a player who, might wash out, but if they work, then they can be a superstar. They can be a goal scorer. Chuck Fletcher never found a goal scorer for the Minnesota Wild.
Right.
That was a problem in his tenure. He tried. He never found it. And the most notable draft pick that I'll reference is notoriously Brock Besser.
Yes, that's exactly what I was
Whiffing
thinking.
on Brock Besser for Joel Eriksson-Ek is probably, something going that will always live in this infamy with this team. Signing fourth liners to multi-year contracts
Marcus Foligno
was what killed the Minnesota Wild. So if you have the take that Parise and Suter have hurt this team with their big contracts, please take it and shove it.
Yeah, I would agree. I wrote an article, God, it probably is lost in the annals of Wild Extra at this point, but I wrote an article where I redid that, where we looked at, or I looked at Parise and Suter not being signed here and creating kind of an alternate reality. And it didn't fare much better. I mean, it really didn't. And so even if you assume the Wild tank in the years past, and we had talked about a long time about Chuck Fletcher wanting to build through the draft, and maybe that's what he would have done. But even if they do, there were some game-changing players available, but there's no sure bet that they would have got them. I mean, if the Wild don't sign Parise and Suter, do they get Connor McDavid? I don't know that they do. You know what I mean? And it's going to take a player like that to have the impact that Parise and Suter collectively have had. So I'm with you 100%. There's no guarantee. I mean, I would say it's even less likely that this team would be better off without Parise and Suter. I think that's absolutely a truth. And so to blame them for this team being kind of mired in mediocrity, I think is a little silly, because it's like, he had so many more opportunities to do things. I mean, there's a lot of fair criticism of Chuck Fletcher out there. We defended him a lot up until his firing, and the Besser one's maybe one of the best, and all the other draft picks that he dealt away, and the Pominville extension was one that was really, maybe a faux pas of his. So it's just I'm with you 100%.
I don't know about the Pominville extension.
It was good at the time.
At the time,
it was a good
it
idea.
was warranted.
Yeah, it just looked pretty bad. Almost
he was
immediately.
producing at the time it was given. It seemed very good, and then he kind of fell off the cliff a little bit, even though he was still a good kind of analytics producer.
He was still a great player to have on your team. It's just his price tag was real high.
I'm really curious what Chuck Fletcher's going to do differently in Philadelphia, because he's going into a situation that needs results now.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure a lot's going to change, if anything.
Yeah.
With how he kind of manages. Is you would think when you have your first NHL general manager gig, you learn a few things and you correct that in your next one. Is Chuck Fletcher, that was his first NHL general manager position here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
The Flyers are in a very much win now mode, as it seemed ownership and the higher ups in that organization kind of got tired with Ron Hextall's kind of waited out process.
Yeah. He was fired because of his patience, basically.
Essentially, yeah. So he's coming into a situation where he's got a cupboard full of prospects, which he didn't have when he started in Minnesota.
True.
He's got some pretty talented players on his roster to build around, which he didn't have really in Minnesota when he started. He essentially had Mikko Koivu.
That's about it.
That essentially was it. And really what the Flyers need is a goaltender. He's got to fix the goaltending problem, and he's got to figure that out. And I'm curious with how he does that. He could
Devin
easily,
Dubnyk for Carter Hart, who says no.
He could easily make that acquisition in free agency next year.
Yeah. Bobrovsky's
as
out there.
the Flyers do have some decent cap space. Yeah, he could go get Sergei Bobrovsky, who I will add
Ironically
has
enough.
been during the same time that I threw the Devin Dubnyk 857 save percentage at even strength stat out. The second to last on that list in that time span, Sergei Bobrovsky.
No kidding.
873 even strength save percentage since November 14th.
I would have not have guessed that.
So take that for what you will, but back to the point is I really don't think Chuck Fletcher is going to do anything differently this time around. No. And he pretty much has to. He has no choice, I should say. He's gotta go for it. He's gotta trade at the deadline, be aggressive with first round picks, and
if I'm Paul Fenton, oh my God, I pick up that phone and dial it immediately. Marcus Foligno for a second round pick. Now,
yeah,
do it now.
Restock your second round picks.
Call up Chuck Fletcher. You know how much he hates second round picks. You know how much he loves Marcus Foligno. He signed him to that stupid contract. Do it now. Just do it right away before he has time to think about it.
Chuck, can we interest you in a slightly used Charlie Coyle?
Oh my God, that'd be interesting because I wonder who Chuck really likes from this Wild team, and if there would be a compatible deal there. Because
Nate Prosser.
That's a great one, actually. Yeah, there's got to be some guys on this team that he really covets. A Coyle would be I think a Coyle would be a good cheap get for anybody. I'm to the point where a change of scenery for Coyle, I think, is the only fix for him.
Charlie Coyle is being aggressively shopped per Michael Russo of The Athletic after his kind of post game piece Friday evening.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
Out there.
I don't know. What are you going to get back from a third round pick?
Nothing. You are essentially selling low.
Yeah, you're getting like a third round pick for him. I think it's a great get for someone else.
That's a stretch.
Well, yeah, okay, it's not a great get. For the price, it's going to be a good get.
The contract
for the price and the contract, it's going to be a good get. Because I do think he could find a next level. It just is not happening here, and I don't know why. And certainly, lots of people a lot smarter than me don't know why either. So,
get what you can for him, and then just call up Luke Cunnin and have him take Coyle's spot.
Might as well. You get the same result.
That's exactly what should happen, and that's probably what Paul Fenton is thinking. Is just see what you can get for him, and then have Luke Cunnin take his spot in the top 9 and. There you go.
Yeah, at this point,
you got to give Luke Cunnin his shot at some point.
At this point with the Wild, if you can flip Coyle for a bottom 6 center, I hate to reference it, but like a Kyle Brodziak type.
I completely forgot about Kyle Brodziak until Friday night.
I had too. That's why I just thought of his name. If you can flip Coyle for a guy who's a bona fide third line center right now, and maybe move Eriksson Ek to a wing. Upon Koivu's return, perhaps, I think that's a good move. Coyle is not a bona fide center by any stretch, and I think all of this, hokey pokey with him going back and forth between wing and center isn't helping him either.
It's time to admit this. I've held off on this for a very long time. Others have very quickly, but I've waited because I thought at some point Charlie Coyle was going to get it together. But it's time to admit that the Brent Burns trade was a complete and utter disaster.
Yeah, I think as soon as Coyle's dealt, I think that's the final stamp, done deal, nail in the coffin, kind of no more. I think you're right.
And I wonder if there was hesitation on Chuck Fletcher's part to move Coyle while he was here, because trading him would essentially
admit defeat,
that the Burns trade was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Coyle was the key prospect, and Devin Setaguchi flamed out. That was more on kind of issues of his own, which not gonna really go into that. And then the first round pick, Zach Phillips. Never made it to the NHL.
Oh.
He couldn't get his skating figured out, and
right.
Woof.
Yeah, that trade. I mean, Burns is great, and we use Burns as kind of a I don't know, maybe a bad example just because of how often Dumba
or Boo earns.
Boo earns. We use him as a negative example all the time just because of the comparisons between him and Dumba constantly. But I mean, imagine this team with Burns. Imagine this team, having the flexibility of having Burns back there and what that could have meant for. Maybe dealing a defender for, whatever. It's value is value, and so having Burns still on the team, it's interesting to think of how differently things might have gone.
They have Matt Dumba.
Well, that's great, and our friend our friend Tony Abbott from the Athletics has said multiple times, and I totally agree. Burns wouldn't have been the same guy if he would have stayed here. Burns playing under Mike Yeo would not be the Brett Burns today, and not. I don't think even close.
And
I think it would have stifled his development so much.
Russo has reported this many times that Brent Burns wasn't going to sign the same contract that he did with San Jose.
Sure.
He was going to want way more money to stay here.
Yep.
So it would have kind of clogged the Wild's cap and whatnot. But yeah. Back to the point. It's time to fully admit that the trade was a disaster, and you can at me about it on Twitter for holding off so long. But it's time to declare that. And Paul Fenton has no, he's got no attachments to that trade or to Charlie Coyle. So get what you can for Coyle, and give Luke Cunnin his shot, because you got to give it to him at some point. So
yeah, and pick up the phone, call Chuck. Call Chuck Fletcher. Get whatever you can. Get a deal.
No way. I found it interesting too that in his presser he really emphasized building through the draft.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah. Which really at the end of his time here he seemingly could have cared less for. But
yeah,
I shouldn't say that. Like you always care about the draft, and he just was in a very win now mode to get the team over the top, and he couldn't. Yeah. Perhaps his best team got buzzsawed by a red hot goaltender who has since been an utter disaster.
His ass, in fact.
So wow, that's that for Chuck Fletcher. I mean, good for him to.
I am a little bit surprised it happened that quickly.
Yeah, but
I mean, he was unemployed for he was with New Jersey, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, he literally wasn't a GM for 2 months of hockey.
Yeah,
and that's it.
So, and it sounds like Brent Flair in one way or another will be joining him out in Philadelphia.
Absolutely, which is great. Good for Brent Flair.
Whether I do find it interesting that. It was, again, Russo reporting that, the Wild would seemingly let him go during the season when he's been just out scouting for them this year. So I find that kind of fascinating that you wouldn't maybe wait till the draft is done. And
well, I mean, if he's got 1 foot out the door, I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? Like
unless they're just having him out there scouting just to have him out there scouting, and they're not actually. They're like, oh yeah, we see your notes here, but no thanks.
Yeah, I think that's what the situation is. Him getting moved, his position being changed or moved or whatever it was, from assistant GM to, assistant to the regional manager or whatever the hell he is now. I think they're plenty happy with just letting him walk to wherever he wants to, because it's just like he was no part of any future plans for that front office.
Right. So, all right. The other talking point I have is this week was the NHL's Board of Governors meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And
we totally forgot about that.
It was weirdly in Georgia. Like, I found that weirdly fascinating.
They're just twisting the knife on Atlanta.
They always have it in, like, Florida or something, someplace nice, and this Georgia of all places.
Hey, remember we took 2 hockey teams from you? Not one, but 2 hockey teams from you?
that hockey team out there that had the jersey mashup of all the Atlanta teams. Did you see that this week?
No.
Oh, it was. I thought I sent that to you.
No.
It was awful. Like
I would have remembered because I would have puked.
It was disgusting.
I mean, Atlanta Flames.
Anyway,
Atlanta Flames is a good jersey, but no jersey in the Thrashers history I don't think was any good. The white jerseys were okay, but the rest were brutally awful.
Right. And anyway, the league approved and went forward with the 32nd team in the NHL, to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Cue up all your Fraser Crane references. I am so ready for Seattle. I've said this before, but it is a lovely city. I can't wait to go back there again.
I can't recommend it enough.
And it's a very good sports town. Ben is looking at the Atlanta jersey that I pulled up that I just referenced, and his face was, I wish I captured that. It was quite a look. But anyway, Seattle's a great sports town.
Yes.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited that they'll kind of have a budding rivalry right off the hop with Vancouver, who's just 100 miles to the north. And do you have any opinions on, well, you have an opinion, obviously, but
I have opinions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But do you like how they are going to restructure the teams to where Arizona joins the Central Division?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that's something that I said was going to happen. And we gave the reasons for that. And the big part of it is the time zone thing, where Arizona joins the Mountain Time Zone for much of the hockey season during daylight savings. So, yeah, for Arizona, I feel for them. I mean, you would have hoped that they could have kind of developed a little bit of that desert rivalry with Las Vegas, and now that's probably taken from them. I don't know that them and Colorado is very much of a natural rivalry. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and I guess we'll find out. Honestly, I guess we'll find out, and these things are always fluid, and Arizona will be in the Central, which is a little weird, but they certainly didn't want to break up either of the Alberta teams. You want to keep those two together. So that's the only move they really had, was Arizona joining the Central, because you certainly couldn't put Seattle in the Central. That doesn't make it any sense at all. So yeah, it is what it is. And I think that it'll be, I say it's fluid because I think Quebec City is still very much waiting for a team. And I think that's going to be relocation.
Houston.
Yeah, Houston, very much still waiting for a team, and that may be a relocation. Maybe Arizona. I mean, and let's be honest, if there's any team that's liable to move in the NHL, is the Arizona Coyotes. So, I mean, if they move to Houston, then that makes way too much sense for them to be in the Central. So
and it's been reported by some of the insiders that rumblings kind of from the Board of Governors meetings is that the Coyotes could be sold here again.
Oh, really?
Soon. So yeah.
Okay. Now, did their
another-
ownership exercise that out clause?
I don't.
The NHL doesn't own them, though, right? It's still that ownership group.
Yeah, the
Correct.
Coyotes are
Yeah.
owned on their own now. They're not run by
that's
the
right. Because I know that ownership group, I believe, had some kind of out clause, but I don't think they've exercised it.
We don't have enough time to run down the Coyotes ownership history. It's
No kidding.
long and tedious. But
God.
yeah, that's exciting, and hopefully we'll get a name soon, and it's down the road. But jerseys, obviously, will be forefront on our minds as it always is. But no, it's exciting to have a 32nd team in the league, balance it out, and we'll see what happens.
Now, you read a lot more than I do, and anybody can make a joke about that all they want, which is totally deserved. But did you read up on a certain reason why it was going to be 21 instead of 20? It seems
nobody
like that's a ways out.
nobody has said this on the record, but we all know it's just because of that 2020 season being the lockout. And
that's a good point.
It also has a little bit to do with the arena situation, and that it might not be ready at that time. Like they were pushing to try to get it that 2020 season, but just to make sure that, you know, in case there's any kind of setbacks.
That's right. That makes. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but the lockout is absolutely the reason why they did that.
Yeah, it is. Let's be honest. We're going to have one.
The impending lockout in 2020 that we can all basically set our watches to. Yeah, that's the reason.
All the players in the league hate escrow. So,
well, and credit to their players and their agents. They're all structuring every contract that's been written in the last 3 seasons has been structured in a way where they get a roster bonus in 2020 instead of actual salary.
Right.
Which is, you know, I mean,
good for them. I
don't know why the teams are so willing to do this, but it's kind of a genius part on you know, the players have the leverage, I guess, in that situation. So do it to it.
All right. That can do it for that. And we're going to very quickly fire away through our remaining segments here. So very rapidly on to the Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, you know, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
Your Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week comes prior to the game in Vancouver, which the Minnesota Wild hotel, prior to their, I think it was Monday night going into Tuesday, the fire alarm went off at their hotel at 2 a.m. So the alarm was going off for roughly a half hour or so, and the hotel was evacuated for about an hour. This coming from Michael Russo again. But Bruce Boudreau did not care for the fire alarm whatsoever. He stayed in bed. He said, and I quote, "I wasn't going to walk down 15 flights of stairs. I didn't smell any smoke. I said, I'm chancing it." Reminds me of the scene in Friends where Joey and Chandler get their new recliners, and the fire alarm goes off, and these guys don't get up from their chairs, so they just feel the floor, and Chandler just says, "No, it's still warm. It's not warm yet. We still got time."
Bruce Boudreau, being a guy who doesn't believe a fire alarm, is one of the least shocking things I think I've heard of this season.
Could you imagine just having an angry Koivu out there for an hour at 3 a.m.?
Just death glaring everybody.
Yeah. Just, wow. That, but no, it's a beauty quote from Bruce Boudreau, who later in the week called his team awful and sloppy and whatnot.
That's right.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week. On to our Kirill Watch.
Kaprizov across the goose end. Kaprizov shoots and he scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov. I don't think, do you remember if I tweeted anything about him this week from the podcast Twitter account?
I don't believe so.
He didn't do it. Isn't he playing in that international tournament? Or is that done?
I don't recall.
Anyway, Kirill Kaprizov, 34 games for CSKA Moscow, 15 goals, 10 assists, 25 points on the season. I don't know if they just had I think he just had an off week. I think he played some games, but nothing notable from that. So there's your stats on him. Ben, is there another prospect we want to highlight?
Sure, why not? So I've got Sean Boudreau here, who, again, we were pretty happy with the day 2 for the Minnesota Wild draft this year. He was one of those guys that was taken late, kind of a flyer a little bit. He's taken in the 6th round of this year's draft, and he's currently playing in the Q as well, another Q prospect, which, as we mentioned, was unusual for Wild prospects past, but he's playing for the Gatineau Olympics, and he is having a pretty solid season, 30 points in 30 games, 15 goals, 15 assists. You certainly don't expect much out of a 6th-round pick, so let's be honest. But it's nice that the Wild in the 6th round, I mean, in years past, they've taken, a local kid who maybe didn't amount to much, or they take a guy that's 6'7" and maybe at his best could be a bad enforcer someday. For them to take in the 6th round a guy who's producing a point per game in the Q, which isn't a super offensive league. It's definitely not up to the level of the OHL or maybe even the WHL. It's probably the lightest scoring of the junior leagues. It's interesting. It's exciting. It's good that they got a guy who maybe could be a contributor. I don't think the ceiling for Mr. Boudreau is much higher than a bottom 6 guy, but hey, a 6th round pick. I mean, that's the ultimate roll of the dice. So, he's a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, he was a pick in this year's draft, so he's only 18, 19 years old right now. But having a solid season, he's up on the leaderboard of Wild prospects in the farm right now as far as the points, total points and a points per game goes with that 1 point per game. So solid. Obviously, like I said, good for a 6th round pick.
All right, there you go. There's your career watch and there's your prospect watch for the week. Over to our Central Intelligence report.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
Central Division heating up as always. As it gets cold this time of year, the Central Division stays red hot. The Nashville Predators, 39 points, are joined atop the Central Division standings with 39 points. The Colorado Avalanche have snuck right in there.
Crazy.
Which is incredible. Winnipeg Jets, 36 points. Dallas Stars, who've won 4 in a row, 6 out of 10. They are at 35 points. Minnesota Wild, 32 points. And the St. Louis Blues got up over the Chicago Blackhawks with 24 points. And the Chicago Blackhawks with 23 points.
Oof.
Losers of 6 in a row and 8 of their last 10. They are in the Central Division basement.
So I feel like, and last season was a lot of fun to watch the Blackhawks implode, don't get me wrong. I feel like Wild fans should be enjoying this more. Maybe it's tough to enjoy when the Wild are literally currently in the middle of a swoon right now, but I feel like we should be celebrating the Blackhawks being garbage a little bit more than we are. Like, I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, we're taking no joy in that right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's all the whole glass house throwing stones thing. But I mean, come on, the Blackhawks suck. This is awesome.
Yeah, enjoy it. But yeah, all right. There's your Central Intelligence briefing for the week. And last, not least, jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
All right, Ben. We have kind of run a little long on time, so we're going to have to condense our...
Sorry, Tom.
Jerseys. We're gonna highlight the 2000s very quickly this week, and we're just gonna pick one best and one worst.
What? One?
Yeah.
What time are we at?
I think we're up over an hour. Yeah. So we're gonna limit it, and we can come back to it next week if we feel
Giles,
anything
if we're gonna be damned,
is mixed.
We
why
we better be damned for who we are.
Oh, we are. We're holding to it. We're just gonna condense it down to one, and we can.
I'm not happy about this, Sherrard.
I think we'll both have things that we've probably already touched on at some point in our podcast's illustrious history.
Yeah, sure, but
all right, I'll let you lead off.
Well, it's tough to pick just one. I had a list of like 20.
Yeah.
So worst, we're going to go with the worst jersey of the 2000s, according to me. God, I have a long list.
So in 2007, 2008, I'll preface this, the Reebok Edge system was introduced, and it did good ruin a fair few jerseys in the National Hockey
the thing
League.
is, it ruined them, but none of the teams that I have on my list are because of that, actually, because of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was a dark, dark day in hockey jersey history.
Yeah, it was.
But none of these jerseys that really actually have anything to do with that. I'm going to go with, God, there's so many. I'm going to go with the Anaheim Ducks redesign. Their first redesign when they dropped the mighty.
You're stealing my bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fine. Just go on. I've got some others queued up. So go on.
I've got a ton queued up. I absolutely hated it. I mean, you and I very famously love the Mighty Ducks jerseys. The Anaheim Ducks sold the team, had to drop the mighty for whatever reason, or wanted to drop the mighty. I guess
they didn't have to. They just
did because they're dicks. And that redesign was just awful. I mean, it just said Ducks with a foot. I mean, no jersey logo should have a foot on it. It's just bad.
The Avalanche do.
Case in point. I mean, no, that jersey just looked awful. The colors are awful. The logo was awful. It was just awful. It was a sad, sad day for us Mighty Duck loving folk. And then they won a freaking cup in it, and it's just like, just vomit layered on top of vomit.
There you go, vomit on top of vomit. My worst jersey of the decade. This is, we have discussed this a fair few
I almost went
times
with this one because I know exactly what you're talking about.
On this podcast, and it had its own title, in fact.
It did.
From the 2003-2004 Dallas Stars, I give you, ladies and gentlemen, the Mooterus jersey.
Oh, the Mooterus. Oh, God.
Never forget.
We really... That was a great running joke that you and I and Charlie had. The whole first season, we referenced the Mooterus almost every episode.
Did.
And that kind of fell by the wayside, as running jokes tend to do. But, man, was that jersey bad. I mean, just... I don't know. There's so many things you can say about that jersey that just none of them are positive.
It's just Justin looked it up here as we were talking, and... He was basking in its glory.
Yeah.
But, all right, Ben, best one from the decade.
Whew. It's really tough for me. Best from the 2000s. It wasn't a long list, to be honest. There was a lot of jerseys that debuted in the 2000s. Not a lot of them were good. Not a lot were good. So I'm gonna go. I'll go the homer route. The wild green alternate jerseys, I think, were a damn solid jersey. Maybe I'm just homerish here, and maybe there was better jerseys introduced in that decade. But that green jersey it was a good look. It was a really good look, and I really did enjoy those jerseys. You and I weren't huge on shoulder piping anywhere, but I think that jersey just kind of worked for what it was and was an underrated look. And it was almost kind of a shame that jersey never got to be the team's primary jersey. They did wear it a ton. They wore it a ton at home. And so that helps, especially when they kind of realized that nobody liked the red jersey anymore. But that was a jersey that was introduced, I believe, in 2009, 2008 or 9. And that was a solid jersey, and I really enjoyed it.
Was unveiled at the Minnesota State Fair by the late Derek Bugard.
Yes, it was. I remember that.
All right, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here.
Really?
With my my favorite from this decade. As we record this podcast, I'm wearing the Buffalo Sabres Buffa Slug jersey, but that's not my pick here.
Has no legs.
In 2009-10, the Nashville Predators came out with an alternate blue jersey.
That
was pretty simple, and it just had their main crest on it, and it just was blue with white trim, just a couple of stripes. It was just very good looking, and I don't know why in God's name they ever went away from that, but it was so nice. And now they've just come at us with yellow, and more yellow. This jersey was free of yellow.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know, they completely went 180 from that jersey, but they have fallen desperately in love with the color yellow in the last decade.
There's checkerboard in the stripes. I didn't see that. Okay. Well, pick rescinded. The template was there for a good jersey, but
yeah. Well, I do think it was a good jersey, though. That was a jersey I thought of as one of the best. I think it was a decent jersey. The checkerboard is a little bit weird, but I guess I think they were going for kind of the racing, the Tennessee being a big racing state, a big stock car racing state, I think was what they were shooting for there.
All right. Then my other one is I'm just going to say good that since I rescinded my pick is the Toronto Maple Leafs, their alternate jersey in the early 2000s with the kind of the vintage Maple Leaf logo that they've kind of gone back to now, but that's my particular favorite. And I'm also gonna put out there, just because we have to reference it, in the bad column, the Cletus Kidney Stone jersey from the Edmonton Oilers.
I had it in my phone as Kidney Stone.
Yeah,
because that was also a name of an episode, a Kidney Stone from Cletus.
Yeah.
And Cletus being the Fox Sports robot, and that's what the Edmonton Oilers third jersey design looked like. That was actually a fun fact, designed by Seth MacFarlane. Not Seth MacFarlane. That's the Family Guy guy.
The McFarlane sports guy. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He's the creator of Spawn. What's his...
Oh, never mind.
Not Seth MacFarlane. Todd McFarlane?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it was designed by the creator of Spawn comics, which is kind of cool, but also a very good reason why you don't like comic book artist-designed hockey jerseys.
Here's a fun fact. In the 2003-2004 season, the league introduced the vintage jersey program, which 7 teams, Boston, Edmonton, Los Angeles, Montreal, New York Rangers, St. Louis, and Vancouver, wore uniforms of the past for select games.
Always a good decision.
That was a good move on all accounts.
Always a good decision.
So there you go. All right, that's it for jerseys. As Ben glares at me, rolls his eyes, and whatnot. We can come back to that a little bit more next week.
I have my complaints.
We have to rehash some 2000s jerseys, but since we had a lot of main topics to hit on this week, we ran a little bit long, but nonetheless, we will call it a week. Thank you so much for listening. If you are in the spirit of giving or sharing, share the word of this Otherwise Fine podcast with your friends, your family. If they're a big Wild fan, let them know of us. Word of mouth helps spread the word on this Otherwise Fine show. Again, you can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell, our podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. We have Facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast. We do some pre and post game videos on our social media channels and our YouTube channel. So do check that out as well. We again write for ZoneCoverage.com. Go to ZoneCoverage.com/subscribe. Get $20 year subscription to Zone Coverage with the promo code GATG20. And then find this Otherwise Fine show on iTunes. If you listen to iTunes, give us a rating. Libsyn, SoundCloud, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, all that fun stuff. And yeah, that will do it for us this week, and we will talk to you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.